What up, Salvador Briggman? Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Thank you for joining me here today, taking a little bit of time out of your day to learn about crowdfunding, what works in terms of getting funding to your project, and also hearing from world-class creators, people coming on this show every single week who are raising money on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and also using new techniques such as regulation crowdfunding in order to do that, to get funding for their passion, to get funding for their dreams, and also to turn those obviously into physical products, into things that people can actually own, use, and buy. So super exciting. We spoke with a creator who has attracted more than $100,000 for their Kickstarter campaign, more than 1,900 backers to their campaign, and they are also a 9-time Kickstarter creator. So one of the common questions I always get is like, hey Sal, this is so exciting, this is so new, but I'm also really nervous. What happens if I fail the first time? What happens if I don't, do well when it comes to my first campaign? And one of the things about this that I always say is, it really doesn't matter how many times you don't succeed. It's really just the times that you do that completely catapult your career into a whole new trajectory. It really doesn't matter as well how many times you strike out. It's almost like you're playing baseball, but it doesn't matter how many times you strike out. You can just get up to the plate and you can hit the ball again. And as long as you keep your eye on the ball and you're practicing your swings, you can eventually knock that thing out of the park. It's kind of like being in a batting cage, right? More than actually playing the game, which is really interesting. And that's incredible that medium, this platform exists. So you're going to hear a couple of different strategies that went into this campaign, how this individual was able to raise 6 figures with their campaign, attract nearly 2,000 backers, as well as what worked for them with the other projects that they've done. So this is going to be great and applicable for you for a number of different reasons, but also I think just in terms of mindsets, being aware this is a process, this is something that you're going through. And the more that you master this process like a scientist, you buckle down, you're absorbing all of this information like a sponge, and you really apply what works. It's designed to get you results. But even if you kind of botch it a little bit, you can always go back at this thing again and again. And the more invested you are in learning this process, the more it's going to work out for you in the long run when it comes to turning your passion into products, right? Turning your passion into profit, turning those things that you really want to do into real world creations. And I think that if nothing else, that's kind of what separates my community from everyone else out there. We got tons of different influencers out there online, and my community are people who, we don't just have ideas, we don't just love to daydream, we don't just love to, sit back in the armchair and be like, it'd be so cool if this thing existed. We actually take action. Like, I'm so proud of that. You guys take action, whether that's talking with students in my coaching calls, talking with my long-term students, talking to people who have read my book, The Kickstarter Launch Formula, listeners of this show, YouTube viewers, blog viewers, all that kind of stuff. You guys take action, and that's one of the most consistent things that I've noticed about my community. And one of the things that I myself am just always blown away by when someone has been persistent over time, over many months, to bring something into the world to benefit other people. That is so amazing and so freaking cool. So we're going to get into the episode in just a second. I just got 2 really quick announcements. The first one is that, first of all, if you are new to the game, if you've never launched a campaign before, or you want to just get access to kind of the tried and true of what's designed to get you funding, there's also some of the new techniques, some of the new strategies when it comes to getting funding on Kickstarter, how to get backers, how to actually promote your campaign to strangers, how to make sure that people discover this online. You can rocket this into the Hall of Fame, right, when it comes to a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to discover some of those strategies, some of those hardcore tactics and techniques, go and check out this free course that I got for you at the link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. And obviously Crowdcrux is the website that I started in 2012. It was my blog, which I initially started, but become so much more than that. Obviously the housing for my YouTube, for my podcast, for all the things that I do online. So you can go check that out at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter. The other quick announcement that I got for you is that you're really looking to make a minor investment here, and you're really ready to upgrade your education. You really want to study this, right? You want to understand what goes into getting a project funded. You want to understand the steps that you have to go through. You want to understand the process. The more that you begin to become comfortable with the process, the more that you understand the process, the easier it is for you to see those success results that you want to when it comes to crowdfunding. And also, honestly, you just feel a lot more confident going through the process when you understand it and you know it and you know what you got to do. So if that sounds interesting to you, go and check out my book, which is available paperback version and also on Amazon and also on Audible. So I'll give you the link for Audible because a lot of people love listening to audiobooks. And I think it's because you can do a lot of different stuff at the same time. You can be learning, you can be upgrading your education while also doing and getting things done in your life. You can go to the link I'm about to mention at crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio. That link is crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter wdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio, crowdcrux.com/Kickstarter audio will take you to Audible. You can actually download a free copy of my book, and you can get a 30-day free trial of Audible if you are so interested. All right, guys, let's get into this episode and let's discover how this individual is able to attract more than $100,000 in funding dollars and also attract more than 1,900 backers. And it's coming up right after this. If you're worried about the fulfillment and shipping part of your Kickstarter campaign when it comes to getting out all those perks and rewards to your backers, rest assured, I've put together a complete Kickstarter fulfillment and shipping checklist for you, and it's free. This is sponsored by the folks at Fulfillrite, and they thought that you should have this checklist as part of your arsenal going into a crowdfunding campaign. If you want to get instant access to this checklist and it's free, you can go to fulfillrite.com/checklist. Again, that is fulfillrite.com/checklist. Fulfillrite.com/checklist. Just go to that link and you can download it immediately. Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Today we have a multi-time successful Kickstarter campaigner on the show whose recent campaign has already hit the six-figure mark and raised over from 1,000 to 500 backers, more than that, and 5 days to go here. And we have Matt here on the podcast to talk a little bit about that. Matt, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Definitely, man. So for those of you who don't know about you, maybe you could just begin with a little bit of an introduction and also kind of introduce us a little bit to what you're doing now.
Sure. So I represent Loke Battle Mats. It's a family business from the UK, and we specialize in accessories for role-playing games. So things for your Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder and similar sorts of games. We're best known for our range of battle mat books, which are layout sort of like a lay flat books that you get sort of 60 map pages on average per book, and they're just lots and lots of different scenes of battle maps that you can then play out the scenes for your role-playing games on, and they're very handy and portable, and we've got like I think about 16 different titles or more out at the moment, and lots of them have their origins in crowdfunding campaigns on Kickstarter.
Cool, man. What is your role when it comes to these projects? Are you involved in the creative side? Are you mainly managing things? Are you doing marketing? What's your role when it comes to these campaigns?
So it's a two-person operation, and my main side is doing all of the map drawing, and I've got the inside sort of game knowledge. So I'm sort of a 30-year role-play veteran. So it's one of those hobby into profession type things. So yeah, art and product design.
So it sounds like you kind of bring a little bit of the creative side and also the knowledge expert, it sounds like, right? So yeah. When it comes to just to kind of understand a little bit of your story, right? And before we get into the project, what were you really doing here before you transitioned to putting out these products for gamers and launching these campaigns? What were you doing before that?
So we had a very brief time as a reseller. So would be selling gaming products and books via our own website and all of the sort of like the main reselling sites like Amazon and the like. And started thinking more about doing our own products. And back in about 2015, I'd like to say, we started making wargaming mats. So I think at the time, the game that I was playing the most was X-Wing. So the tactical tabletop on a 3-foot square, and just doing lots of starscapes and sort of like above Death Star style pictures and things and producing those. And then because I think I do more role play than tabletop war games, I started thinking, well, it'd be handy to have some more nice mats to do the role playing on. So we started doing, I think our very first Kickstarter campaign was where we kicked these off, which was for encounter mats. So lots of 2-foot square mats and bigger with lots of designs on. So people could, I think that campaign ended with about 100 designs.
In the early days there, what was your typical day like? Were you going to a 9-to-5 job? Was this your full-time passion that you were doing and trying to start a business around? What was your day like in those early days?
Yeah, so a full-time job, but a sort of a contracting job. So intermittent times and hours and things, and yeah, IT consultancy type work. I think a lot of people in the gaming industry tend to come from an IT background for some reason.
And for you in your area of the world, was this very common to produce products for games and to put that out there? Was that something that a lot of people were doing in your area, or was that not the case?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, definitely back then you didn't see too many people who are also sort of making products or trying to sell things on as a sideline to their main job. There was either a couple of big companies that did accessories to things, or yeah, people just hobbying.
So what did the people in your life think about when you really started to bring these products to life, right? And to really sell them online, to do your first campaign? What was the reaction like to the different people in your life when that started happening?
I suppose it depends if they're involved in any of those hobby things themselves. So, like the people my friends that are in the gaming groups and things, yeah, they fully understood, got it, and maybe even bought some of the products. People that didn't really get it, you've got to go over the first sort of explaining role play and moving miniatures around on maps and things. So, yeah, I don't think you even get as far as explaining how you're then trying to raise funds and build a product term and things.
With your friends, when you first had that campaign be successful on Kickstarter, was that like something that was a big event for you? Like, what did that really mean to you when you really were putting this out there and you had people actually support your campaign?
It wasn't a huge campaign, that first one. I think it was still a good sort of like couple of hundred backers, maybe even 400 or 500. But it feels like a smallish campaign now because we've had much bigger ones since, I suppose. But yeah, at the time, yeah, no, it was very exciting. It's one of those things where you check your phone frequently and you'll be like, oh, well, look, I've got another one. There's another backer. That excitement, I think, then comes off with the people around you to a degree, and they'll be rooting for you and checking now how the campaign's gone, and you get people sort of messaging and going, oh, you've reached whatever stretch goal.
So you go from having some campaigns that are getting like 400 backers, 500 backers, 600 backers, 100 backers, and all of a sudden you like balloon, right? And you have one campaign that gets like 5,000 people behind it. What was that like? Like, how did that feel for you to really kind of blow up in that way? And do you think it was just the type of product you were doing, or why do you think that happened?
So I think there's a bit more of a natural progression. We settled on a format that was unique. There'd never been this book of maps sort of format. And we started selling it before the crowdfunding. So we'd had the first sort of small batch of these, and we do a lot of the trade shows, particularly around the UK. So we'd gone to like one of the larger ones early in the year, and this would have been about 2018. And we had some of the very first big book of battle mats there, and it just disappeared in an hour or two. We'd had dozens and dozens of units, and they just sold straight away. People were coming over and going like, where are these things? Where can we get more of them? So we're like, okay, that's the thing.
That's literally like hotcakes, selling like hotcakes, yeah.
Yep. So we had more produced, and we ended up winning like an award at the biggest UK show, which is the UK Games Expo. The People's Choice Award is one of the ones that the community vote on instead of like the judge and jury type thing. Mm-hmm. We got the people's vote for that, and we had hundreds of units for that show. They all sold out. And a lot of the feedback we were getting was sort of people were asking for a bigger version and a slightly different version. We're like, okay, well, let's kickstart that. Let's go and expand this range out now. We've got something that we know is going well, and make it bigger.
So you kind of had a mini success in the quote unquote real world, right? And saw that kind of behavior and people just going stark raving mad, right? Wanting this product which you had created. As a creator, what did that feel like to be able to have other people respond that way? Right. And because that's kind of what I feel like we've all been searching for, right? Is to have just people love it, to use it, to be a part of their games. What did that really mean for you? Was it this financial success? Was it that other people were using it and you liked that part? Was it the community? What part did you really feel rewarding when that happened?
I think anyone that creates anything for a certain amount of time will have imposter syndrome over it. They'll be there sort of going, well, I've done it and people have bought it, but why? That's just something I did. And it takes a while you have to sort of see people not know it's you. And so if you go to like your local gaming shop and you can see there's a group there playing with one of your products, they don't know who you are. They don't know you made it. They're enjoying it and using it, and you can kind of go, they're not faking that. They're not just being polite because they know I'm here. Mm. It's actually being used. And, and for online, you see it more. So you'll see your stuff appear in like people's actual plays, and you'll see comments on forums and things, and you'll see on social media, people may suggest your product, or they'll see a picture and go, yeah, that's great. I use it all the time. It's really good. It's really good to see something you've made out there being used and helping people in their games. And if they get enjoyment out of it, it's fantastic.
So you had this incredible experience where people just kind of rallying around this and loving it and using it, right? And you guys decide, okay, we've been doing a couple of different Kickstarter campaigns. Let's do one for this product. Right. When you were kind of gearing up to that, I know it's kind of led to a lot of your other success, right? So I kind of want to just talk about it a tiny bit. Was there anything different that you did for this one, or was it kind of like the same launch system you were using and it just really hit big?
The first one for the books was a very good success for us at the time. So the one that really kicked off and had a good sort of like the first 6-figure one for us was the Dungeon, which is a modular set. And it's all down to, I think, customer feedback and the evolution of the product. So the first one we made was sort of for the US, it's like almost a letter-sized book. So it opens up to be sort of like 1 foot by 1.5 foot sort of thing to use. Mm-hmm. And people loved it. But a lot of the feedback we got was, you need to make this bigger. We want bigger play areas. So like, okay, we made one that was double the size. And people are like, this is great. It's a little too big to move around, though. We can't put it on a shelf. It doesn't quite fit in the bag unless it's a big rucksack. So, yes, we said bigger. Now we're saying somewhere in between, what can you do? So we'd had a lot of thoughts about that and thought, what you can do is you could, because a lot of the times we make the designs in these things, so two of the books next to each other, expand the play area. So if you've got two, bigger play area, more options to sort of like change the pages between the two, change the layout. We made that into a product. So we made a special product which was exactly that. And we kind of went a bit bigger with that one and went for sort of custom paper sizes and things. So they're not standard paper sizes. They're 1 foot squares. So that stacks well with the other books. And I think the product evolved, and then we got to sort of kickstart into that.
Yeah. So I was going to say, just to recap what you were saying there, it sounds to me like the first learning lesson was that when you can try something out in the real world, even if it's a small scale, if it's a physical product, if it's a board game, whatever it is, and you can have people respond to it in some way, that's almost like you got a little bit of a gem potentially. And maybe you kind of have to like polish that gem, right? You got to make it be better and better and improve on it. But you've at least noticed something that might work well online. And have you involved that in the future, getting feedback on your early products and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things that crowdfunding is fantastic for is you get a direct channel to people that are passionate about your product. And they will tell you if you've taken a wrong turn. Of course, they'll also tell you if they like what you're doing. Invested in it in like a sort of supportive way.
Yeah.
So like they'll still say, we want better products from you. Help us give you information to make better products.
One of the things I also said, man, I love the UK, like incredible area, studied abroad in London, really great. You guys are way cleaner as well than a lot of the cities in the United States. Is there anything different about gaming or your industry in the UK versus the US? Because a lot of your backers are from the US, right?
They are, yeah. I think that's a pretty much similar demographic for anyone who launches from anywhere. So, if you're running your campaign from the EU, from the UK, or the US, generally speaking, about 50 or 60% of your audience is usually the US. I think it's just that the demographic that back gaming Kickstarters, they're mostly in the US.
Yeah. So it sounds like that platform also allowed you, maybe a lot of people around you in your area weren't necessarily involved in tabletops or games and that kind of stuff, but it allowed you to tap into that. And it doesn't matter where you're launching from almost, because you can reach this huge audience of people.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, especially a couple of years ago when logistics was a little bit easier. There's been, a couple of massive world upsets and Brexit in our particular case that have made dealing with moving things around internationally that a bit more difficult than it used to be for our first few Kickstarters, where you could just sort of go, okay, the EU is one chunk, the US is one chunk. We just have to talk to a couple of people about shipping logistics.
In kind of thinking about this, I mean, you've had a lot of different projects and sort of you add them all together and it leads to these tremendous successes, right? And in those early days, it's kind of difficult, I think, to realize that. What do you feel like for you has been the biggest learning curve when it comes to bringing these products in your minds into the real world and getting them funded and getting people to really buy into that?
I think there's lots of different things you learn, but one thing that you've got to focus on, I suppose, is the audience. So you're never going to get anywhere unless you've got that audience, and you can build it over multiple campaigns. As long as you don't do an absolute disaster and mess up even, and the only real way to mess on Kickstarter is not tell people what's happening and not deliver. As long as you're keeping people informed, you're doing what you said you're going to do, you're producing the sort of project you said you're going to do, and they get it, then that's an audience built. And as long as you're being your customer service is good, if someone's got a complaint, you listen to it, don't dismiss it, listen to feedback, and essentially just be essentially a good, friendly company is, I suppose, the way of it. And your audience will, it's not necessarily loyalty, but they'll pay attention if you've got something new, they like what you had before. And you never get all of the same people backing again and again and again. I mean, some of them might have gone, well, I only needed that product, I don't need your next one. It looks okay, but I've got one, thanks. And that's fine. You don't expect to carry every backer and build from it, but some of them will. And you'll get an audience that wants your stuff and wants to use more of your stuff, and they'll possibly speak well of you to their friends, which might help them back. So yeah, more campaigns over more time, you do build more of an audience.
When you start to build this audience, I think a lot of people don't really know what that's like. And in some cases, it can be like you're like a mini celebrity almost, right? In other cases, there's a lot of pressure, I feel, as well. Because like, wow, we did this project that was massive. Now I got to do another one, right? How did your team feel about that? Like, was it in that same way? Or how did you feel about having this new audience of people?
Yeah, we tend to go for a fairly minimum sort of like contact approach. So only say something outside of like the busyness of a campaign if it's something important. I mean, you don't want to spam people because that's going to negatively affect your audience. And unless, and I don't think we've got this particularly, but I know some people have, is where you have a real interaction all the time. And, like, you move them onto a different platform, and like you actively sort of doing lots of talking and things. At the moment, because we're a small team, we haven't really got all the time that it'll need to do all of that sort of extra in between campaign audience sort of building and communication.
So for you, is it mainly the updates, or is it email, or like how do you stay in touch with them?
We've got our sort of passive channels, so all the social channels. So we'll frequently do, what we're doing, what products we're thinking of, and just general bits and pieces on all the standard social networking stuff. We do a Patreon, which is for anyone who's really likes the sort of stuff we do. We regularly put maps up onto there and put free bits onto there. So if people want digital stuff in between all the main campaigns, there's a way of sort of following along and doing that. But yeah, as far as the big products and things go, we support, because obviously we've gone into retail off the back of most of the Kickstarters. So the products tend to be Kickstarted and then go into the normal sort of channels and be available in the shops and online marketplaces and things.
That's so cool,
we
man.
do a lot of support for that. And yeah, as soon as the first time you see your thing on a shop shelf, you're like, oh, that's mine. I did that.
That's so freaking cool. And, also it kind of makes you like, I don't know, like the celebrity or like the, the person who's doing that when it comes to the board games. And like, if you're with all your friends, like I'm sure that feels just really cool. But also Patreon,
nice.
That's really cool as well. I mean, that's something I've seen more and more people do for sure.
Yeah, no, it seems to work very well for interaction again, because you've got people there. I mean, I'll take suggestions for maps and things. Quite often get around to doing them.
100%. So when you kind of started this journey in the early days, did you ever imagine yourself doing a campaign like this with thousands of people, or was this kind of like a hope, or was this a very strategic plan for you? Would you feel?
Strategic plans are a bit too optimistic. No, I mean, it wasn't entirely accidental, I don't think, but I think you have to be more tactical than strategical, if it makes sense. Like you might have a grand plan of like, great, let's sell millions of units everywhere and make fortunes, but the actual steps to get there, who knows what they are. You can see the short-term ones, which is we've got an idea, we would like to crowdfund that idea because it's a very good way of telling if it's got legs, basically. Because if people don't back it, then you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not quite right. Maybe we'll do something else. And our most recent Kickstarter, we've not gone with the same formula as our more recent book Kickstarter. So we had almost like a trilogy of modular books that we did on Kickstarter. And the next one after those three, it's going to go straight into retail. So we're not taking that one to Kickstarter. Instead, we're taking some different, it's the campaign that's on now, actually. We've gone on with a different idea. It's still map-led because it's mainly what we do, but it's more maps and modules to go with them. And they're not in a book format this time for the maps. And there's decks of cards and things. So basically, it's a different product. And it seemed the right thing to do to go onto Kickstarter once you've got a range established and put something else on there to see if that's got the same sort of appeal and see if you can build it in the same way. So I think, essentially, once you've managed to get a product to where it needs to be in the market, it doesn't necessarily need Kickstarter anymore. And you can then use Kickstarter or any other crowdfunding, obviously, to see what other products might work and join the portfolio or fit more niche demands. So I think a good example actually is the one we did last year was digital sci-fi maps, because we get asked all the time for more sci-fi maps, but it's very difficult to get enough retail interest in sci-fi maps. So we just did a big digital campaign and did loads and loads of sci-fi assets because they're our customers. They want them. Let's give them something.
When you're planning this and people are supporting your campaign, I know this is kind of a basic question, but I still think there's a lot of mystery around this. How do you think a backer is different than a customer, right? So like someone who's actually backing your project on Kickstarter, what do you think is going through their mind? Like, why are they choosing to do that versus just buy it outright eventually when it comes out?
Yes, I suppose, the comparison is, are they a pre-sale customer or are they a backer, sort of quote unquote? I mean, I suppose it's very similar, but if you're a backer from the start of a campaign, unless someone's gone in with like a 100% finished product and they're just saying, right, okay, now I just want to make more of these, what we tend to do is we tend to go in with anything from like a 30-40% finished product up to maybe about 80 at the most. So there is still leeway for interaction and sort of go, okay, these are, for us particularly, it's like, these are the maps we're doing. And some people come back and go like, oh, like, you really need like map type XYZ in there, otherwise it isn't quite right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do surveys, you can ask more people, you can sort of get the feedback and go, okay, right, well, it seems like, yes, that is what people want. Let's do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think if people feel involved in the design or the finishing touches or some choices in a product, they get to feel even more sort of involved with it, because out there, there'll be people who've suggested things that have gone into products that have then gone into shops and things. And those ideas, whether it's from a bunch of backers or whatever, were only generated because that conversation happens before the product's finalized.
So would you say it's almost like an act of co-creation in that way?
To a degree, yeah. So it's sort of like group co-creation, maybe, because you can't go and sort of like sit with each person and go, right, what are your ideas? But you can kind of see what the sort of the flow is, and like if you suggest something and there's like not the best reaction, you can then suggest a tweak.
So when you're also doing this, just kind of piggyback off that point of co-creation, how soon are you actually announcing this to your audience before you go live with the campaign?
Well, Kickstarter now, the pre-launch is a massive, important part. Like, there's a whole bunch of relatively ballpark sums you can do, but essentially you need to have enough people following your campaign that roughly about 20% of those people at your average pledge level will fund you straight away. So if a campaign doesn't hit its goal and doesn't sort of like get the right trajectory in that first sort of 24, 48 hours, they're critical, the way that campaigns work at the minute. You used to have sort of like a U-shape where you'd have a lot of activity at the start and then it would slump through the middle, and then a lot of activity at the end. At the moment, it's so much activity at the start, then it'll slump down, and then it's more activity at the end, but it's usually never quite as much as the start. So the pre-launch is very, very important.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have different phases there within the actual launch.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, for pre-launch, Kickstarter now lets you sort of like start gathering followers via the coming soon sort of thing. So as soon as you've got your project accepted, you can sort of send people to that page and they can just click a button, then they'll get an email when it goes live. And you can see those numbers. So you can sort of go, oh, great, 1,000 people are backing it. So by the very, very rough sort of maths, it sort of says, okay, that means 200 of those people, because about 1/5 of the people that follow back on day one, apparently. And that seems to play out in the times we've seen it.
Okay, so basically, if you see the number of followers you got on that pre-launch and it's 1/5, are probably going to translate into backers. And you're kind of starting this, I assume, a couple of weeks beforehand, right?
Yeah, ideally. I mean, depending what sort of time you've got leading into it, you can do things like your own landing page. So you're like, before the product's approved on Kickstarter, you can be collecting people's interest, and you can try and incentivize with like freebies or something. So you're like, if you're a landing page signee and you back the campaign 3 or 4 months later, you get an extra miniature, some free digital stuff. It depends what your campaign is, obviously, but you could add something unique in for them. Yeah. You could some sort of reward for people to try and incentivize them to commit to backing some point in advance of the campaign. And the more of that you can build, and I suppose this comes down to mailing lists and things like that, you kind of want to know how many people you could communicate that you've gone live when you go live. And the higher that number is, the more chance you're going to succeed.
Got it. So from all the things you're telling me, obviously talking about pre-launch, giving us great information when it comes to what you need to do for that, as well as your communication, building audience, et cetera. You've obviously learned a lot in your course of being on Kickstarter. For those that are just kind of getting started, do you feel like they should look at this as, this is an opportunity to get feedback, this is an opportunity to get funding? If someone really is like, you know what, I really want to have a massive campaign, what do you usually say to that person?
It depends on a massive campaign, so yeah, and what they're trying to do. So obviously funding goal is going to be important, but you can't set your funding goal to be a successful funding goal if it's not actually the funding goal you need to do your thing, because you can then get stuck in the trap where you go, oh, I need $500, but you actually need like 10,000 to print and make what you're doing. And then you end up making 2,000 and you've committed. So you've got to do the thing and either cut corners to bring your costs down or have a surplus at the end. So you've got to be realistic in how everything is done. And there's a chance for anything to sort of like go big, because someone might just have the best idea ever. And they might start with virtually no audience, put it up on Kickstarter, some people see it and it spreads and it virals, but that's 1 out of every 1,000 would do that by accident sort of thing. The rest of it, you've got to put the work in. And
Persistent.
Yeah, and part of that is build your audience before. So you're like, if you're going in with no audience, then you're just relying on Kickstarter regulars to spot you. Or you can spend almost all of your money on advertising to push it at people to get people to come to you.
So listening to your story, it sounds like, first of all, you've gone from the place with loving to play tabletops, games, to kind of dipping your toes into selling that, to persisting with that, and eventually being able to develop your own products, which is like so cool, being able to quit your job and be able to do that full time, right? With your partner as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's been great.
What's kind of like the next chapter for you here? For also those in the audience, where can they go to learn more about you? But what do you also feel like is your next chapter here in this story?
So, I mean, just searching for Loke Battlemat, so Loke. We've got the slightly different spelling of Loki, so I usually have to spell it out. So, Loke Battlemats.com is our main site, and that'll link off to whatever sort of regional sites and things. But just Googling us or Google Battle Map Books, you should find us as well. And for next, we're essentially always thinking of new products to do, and that's via Kickstarter. Some things, other things will just go out through standard sort of retail and distribution channels. Now that the world sort of opened up a bit more, because we've not really been able to travel and do international shows too much recently. So for the last couple of years, I've been trying to get to Gen Con, but literally haven't been able to come in the country, or the con's not on. So this year should be the first time that we make it out to Gen Con and exhibit there. And that'll be good to sort of like see what is a large audience for us in America actually in person, or yet some of them that go there.
That'll be exciting for sure. And it sounds like that's also where you shine, right? With these live audiences.
Oh, yeah. It's one of those products that if you can put it down and show someone it, and they're a role player, and particularly they're a role player that travels around and plays games in different places, it's the product for them. And we've done small conventions over here, which I think Dragon Meet is one of the sort of like just a couple of thousand people sort of conventions. But because that's a couple of thousand people that are all role players that all travel and play at conventions, we've had fantastic days there, sometimes better than places which have 3 times, 4 times the audience. But, that's a mix of board game, war game. But no, if you do something that's role play focused, it's the right product for them.
Got it. Awesome. So I'll be sure to link up your site in the show notes. My final question for you, and we can end on this note, is if you can speak directly to the audience, and can end with either a final tip. It could be a word of encouragement. It could be something that you wish you knew when you were getting started. It could be some secret that you think that everyone should know when it comes to crowdfunding or getting something off the ground. Anything along those lines, and we can end on that note.
Yeah, let's go for a tip for if someone's starting. Digital's fantastic. So you can do a crowdfunding campaign with nearly zero risk to start up, warm up as it were. So do a digital campaign. So you're like, if you've got a game, do like a print at home version of a game. If it's like a role play thing, similar sort of thing, you can do an online version. But the thing is, you can get all the experience of running a Kickstarter without the difficulty that comes with doing the physical product. So the physical product and the shipping, and you get taxes and all sorts of stuff off the back of trying to move physical product around. Do your first Kickstarter, run it for digital, because you'll get the experience in. You'll be able to deliver it quickly because you can just send the links out. And next time you run a campaign, it'll say 2-time creator, so that's good. You'll have a successful campaign behind you, that's good. And it just gives you basically a trial run almost, so you can have a go at running one. And then when you're ready to do your fantastic idea physically, you've started to build an audience, you can show them your previous work, and you'll learn lots of the intricate sort of back-end things. What does Kickstarter charge? How does it give you backer reports? How do you deal with pledge management? You can have a go at all of that without having to worry about shipping prices going up while you're doing it, and the cost of paper changing, and all the things that keep people awake at night once they've raised money for a big Kickstarter and hope that the world doesn't change in the 6 months it takes them to put the components together.
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome point, man. And I think that's really kind of like almost dipping your toes in the water. And I love the philosophy you have there, which is kind of almost judging your success, not so much on how much you raise, but on what you learn through the process, right?
Yeah, I mean, another really, really good tip is don't look at the amount raised, look at the number of backers. Because the amount raised, it's divided by that number of backers anyway. But the number of backers is the number of people that are on your project. And that's your audience building. That's your chance to sort of show them the other things you have that they might want to buy. That's a customer that might expand and tell other people. Yeah, I find backer numbers to be a better metric than total raised.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much for all these great, incredible tips. Keep launching projects. Looking forward to see more of the ones that you have come out, and good luck with your next campaign.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Thank you for joining me on this episode, spending a little bit of time out of your week to dedicate to your projects, the things that matter to you, and turning your passion into products, turning that passion into something that other people can enjoy and experience, whether it's a board game, a gadget, a gizmo, a design product, something more when it comes to, I guess, an artistic endeavor, right? We actually have a lot of people who book coaching calls with me who will also do artistic projects, people doing publishing campaigns, people designing new artwork when it comes to tarot cards and different types of playing cards and all that kind of stuff. So I get a really large scope of people who have really run campaigns before, and also new people who are just now entering the niche. So when it comes to this, I really set out on a mission in 2012 to try to understand this industry specifically, but also because I felt like people were just kind of teaching it incorrectly. There weren't any teachers really back in the day when I started in 2012. And in addition, there's just so many mysterious things that happen behind the scene that lead into getting a project funded. So that's really why I started this show, which is designed to bring on, I'd say, leaders, I'd bring on voices, people that are being successful and really just sharing what's happening behind the scenes. And that's really my goal, is just to share free education, free information to help you get from point A to point B when it comes to this massive, incredible, most important moment, in my opinion, when it comes to your career, when it comes to this project, when it comes to turning this into something that you're doing full-time potentially in the future. The more that you can get into contact with real world people, the more you can put yourself out there, the more likely you are to get high quality data, which you can use to make important decisions. So some of the people that I'm talking with on my coaching calls are trying to look for, trying to raise money in order to just be able to fulfill production costs. Other people are trying to raise money because they really want to get validation. They want to see, dude, does this exist? Should this actual product exist? And should I spend my freaking time on this for the next, 6 months or the next year? Gosh, Sal, my wife is already complaining how I'm taking over the garage and I'm doing tinkering with all this product stuff, but I love it. I don't know if I should still focus on this. So I'm here to help you and make you those decisions, but also when it comes to after that, which is really building a business, building a foundation for the future. And that's kind of what my passion has always been, but really what I'm actually good at, I think, is designing a strategic step-by-step process for you to take action on. I'm really good at getting people to take action. I'm really good at people to reach their full potential, and using the tactics, the strategy that's designed to proven and get results that's actually going to get you to where you want to be. I'm really good about getting those people to incorporate that into their raise and streamlining the sucker, right? Making it efficient, making it something that you're making rapid progress in a very short time span. And that comes from focus, and that comes from applying the things that are already designed to work. So if that sounds interesting to you, I do one-on-one coaching calls with students. This is an intensive coaching call where we go into not only in depth when it comes to your project, but also understanding what it is that you want to achieve, what you want to accomplish, the steps that you need to do to get there, the tools and resources that can help supercharge this campaign, other people you should be working with in the industry, things you didn't even know about, giving you feedback and critiques on all the work products that you've already come up with. Maybe that's even just thinking through the video, thinking through your war tiers, wondering even, is this something that I should be doing going down the path of Kickstarter? I help in a lot of different arenas. And then one of the things I've also been, talking more about is people are like, Sal, I'd love to do more stuff with you, but I just don't know what's available. So I do these intensive coaching calls, and it's designed to make myself available to the community. I do other stuff as well. I do long-term coaching. I help occasionally on execution. If I really believe in a project, I sometimes bring on a client in that way. A lot of times I do hybrid kind of stuff like that. But for those people that are out there, I really try to design the thing that's going to get you progress fastest, honestly. So for you, there are many different types of industries, categories, products, et cetera. And if you've been listening to the show and you've enjoyed some of my episodes, you've enjoyed some of the information you've taken away, you found it to be useful, practical, and really can actually apply to your campaign, I'm telling you, man, the coaching calls are like 10x, right? What you get on the show. It's also all individualized to you, your situation, your skills, your resources, what you're trying to do, et cetera. So if that sounds interesting to you, go and book a one-on-one coaching call with me. You can go to this link at crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. And you can learn more about that there. In addition, I got some really cool stuff that's coming out. I'm getting into more short form content. So I'm doing some videos. I'm testing out some stuff on TikTok. I'm doing some videos on Instagram. You can always look up my name, Salvador Briggman. I'll probably come up there. And I'm also doing some short form stuff on YouTube. So a lot of exciting things in the works. In addition, I got a whole new course that I'm working on, which I think you guys are going to like. And I'm not even going to talk about that yet because it's still in the planning. It's still in the production stages of that. I come out with some really great content recently when it comes to Patreon. So got some new stuff that's going on there. I have so many rods in the fire, man. So much stuff going on. It's like literally everyone wants to work on with me on the planet. So it's a little bit overwhelming, but it's also exciting and dynamic. And I'm growing my team and all those things. So man, I just hope that also you're cranking away at this every single week. You're putting in your hard-earned work effort into this every single week. And if you do that for a sustained period of time, I'm telling you, this thing will pay off for you in droves. So again, I hope you enjoyed this episode. My name is Salvador Briggman. Go and check out some of the other episodes I got out there. Give me a rating and review on iTunes, please. And I will see you next time.